Reading. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Unknowingly I glanced. Out of nowhere, I looked into the eyes of someone who reflected the same interests as me. The look of curiosity, the alluring feeling, a quick hello, a long goodbye. As I left with a sigh, my mind kept going back and forth. What do they like? I know I like them. They obviously like me. I'm scared of getting lost. I'm scared if I disappoint. I'm scared of the excitement. I'm mostly scared of being oblivious. If I'm being taken advantage of, I know I can be gullible. My mind reeling from thoughts from them. Was it love at first sight, or lust for a night? I seriously just want to do what's right. Without realizing, I have already found myself home in bed, still thinking, what is the potential here? I would like to confide in them, share who I am, ask for their thoughts on things, hold their hand, eat with them, take a shower and wash each other's backs, each other's hair, help with applying self-care, exercise, watch videos with them, learn their preferences, their logic. Are there things they are doing that I can learn from? Are they learning from me? Hopefully we can do activities that are a great learning experience for the both of us. A relationship filled with wonder, excitement, and enlightenment. I'm scared to expect this, or to try these things out with them. I definitely would be willing to learn and grow with them. As I fall asleep with these thoughts, I wake up to a new day. Then, out of nowhere, I find my eyes reflecting in the same eyes once more. We both politely greet each other, a small compliment, and ask of how their health is, and ask of their thoughts, a trending topic, and an ask of recent movies or videos they watched. Looking for some common ground. Time flew by. I find myself holding their hand. How did this happen? We are talking while watching something. I feel too unfocused to pay attention to the show on the screen. My eyes keep trailing to their ear, to their jawline, to their nose, to their eyes, to their lips. I find myself kissing them. From the last spot I looked at to the first. The grip of her hands tighten. An arm wraps around my waist, around my shoulders. We are both panting, gasping for air, smelling, tasting, feeling. We talk more of learning new things. We practice more of trying new things. Parts being pinched, licked, rubbed. A vibration from talking while muffled. A hug, a light pull of hair. A light clasp of shoulders. A light trailing of hands, going from ribs to thighs to chest. A circling motion of light kisses from cheeks to shoulders, to back to belly, to chest to lips. A scream of elation, shaking in vibration. Both of us collapse in exhaustion, feeling content. I close my eyes. My mind wanders to what else is there in the future if they are without me. With me, what will we do to change our futures? Stay entangled, weave in and out, or fray away? The weave is the healthiest choice, but how to get there? A hand rests on my chest, a whisper of good morning in my ear. I hope this relationship turns out well. Next chapter. Chapter 1. Getting closer. I shifted to narrative since I'm weak at it. 3 months later, The weather is warmer as spring turns to summer, and so is their connection. Richard and Mary met often now. Late night conversations that blend into dawn, shared meals, texting notes between shifts at work. They never called it love. Not yet. But the signs are there. One night after returning from her home, he lies awake thinking of her smile. How her texts lit up his phone. How each moment felt delicately carved from something sacred. The ache of wanting more quietly unfolds inside him. He reaches for his pen. Getting to know you. I love the way you look at me, the glimmer in your lovely eyes. When I look at you, I'm happy, my inside filled with butterflies. When time goes by while thinking too much of what is next, excitedly waiting, happy when I see your next text. As we see each other again, shyly wanting it not to end, we are both very strong alone. Nice getting to know the unknown. Chapter 2. Shared growth. 3 months later. Summer blends into autumn. The leaves start to curl and churn, much like Richard and Mary's routines. They've grown closer, too close to be defined. Yet neither says the word relationship. Instead, they share books. They try each other's hobbies. They open up just a little more day by day. Richard notices how Mary began taking better care of herself, cutting back on old habits, setting boundaries with people who once drained her, and he too has started making quiet changes. He eats better, sleeps more, writes clearer. Life still has its messes, but he feels better. One afternoon, while sitting across from her at a cafe, watching her quietly sip her tea, he smiles. Not because she's done anything extraordinary, but because the moment is. He feels gratitude swell inside him. Later that night, it spills onto the page. Change in the air. Lately, notice a lot of change, with better choices being made. At first, the choices felt quite strange. Better, proper like foundation laid. The future looks good with all this. The changes I made with care. I feel like my surroundings blessed. The positivity we share. This feeling lingers in the air, as fate tempts us to dare to bear a boldness, a journey to fare, taking a chance, moments so rare. Chapter 3. The moment of truth. 3 months later. As winter overwhelms autumn one day, the air has a chill that bites a little sharper than it did last week. Richard and Mary are spending more time indoors. Long phone calls under blankets, movie nights that end with heads resting on shoulders, fingers laced together under the covers. One quiet evening, Richard can't take his eyes off her as she hums while folding laundry. It's mundane, but he's spellbound. It's not just attraction anymore. It's comfort, care, curiosity. It's everything. He knows now. There's no second guessing. No nervous pacing. He's in love. He doesn't wait for a grand gesture. While sitting across from her on the floor, he reaches out, takes her hand, and simply says, "I love you." She pauses, startled at first, but her expression softens and she squeezes his hand in return. That night he lies awake, wide-eyed in the dark, heart full and trembling. He writes, "I love you. I love you with all my heart. I knew this from the very start. When I saw you in a while, it grew on me, that sweet smile, the light in your eyes, shining bright, in all my love, in all my life. Love at first sight. I want to be by you, hold you, speak when I can, say I love you. I want to make you so happy. I love to hear you sing something, you being you, me being me. I love you, and you're everything." Chapter 4. Invisible Strings. End of February. She moves out of love. Love doesn't solve everything. Not the old wounds, not the deep-rooted doubts. Mary has become quieter lately. There's a tiredness behind her smile, hesitation in her voice when she says she's fine. Mary was distracted more often. She apologized for things that hadn't happened. She smiled less with her eyes. And Richard, though careful, patient, loving, began to feel like he was writing in a language she no longer read. It wasn't resentment, not yet. It was confusion, mismatched needs, longing unspoken. One night, she admitted she felt torn, but not between him and someone else, but between who she was and who everyone wanted her to be. Parents, friends, work, and maybe him too, even if unintentionally. "I feel like I'm being stretched," she whispered. "Like I don't belong to myself anymore." Richard senses it. He asks gently, but her responses turn vague. She shrugs off his concern with practiced ease. Yet when she thinks he's not looking, her eyes drift away. Somewhere inside, she's retreating. The next morning, Mary came over. She sat at the edge of the bed, hair still damp from a shower, face puffy from crying. She didn't say it, not directly, but they both knew. They were no longer who they had been. They couldn't pretend otherwise. They hugged goodbye with the tenderness of people who still loved each other, but couldn't share the same future. It wasn't a fight. It was a fade. And that night, Richard lay in bed with a hole inside him where a poem used to be. At home in the dark, the pages calls to him. Again, not as a place of clarity this time, but as a confession. The poor marionette. She goes in the direction she is pulled. So many forces wanted her controlled. She has a force of her own, a strong will. Everyone wants a piece of her, half their fill. Unsaid dramas playing through her mind too. The strings cut into her. Those scars stay true. Her truth is to be subservient now. To avoid conflict, she does another forced bow. The people she loves suffers as they watch, as her audience keeps whittling their own notch. No one looks free of damage. Life is very rough. My poor marionette. Love just isn't enough. Chapter 5. Cracks in the Dream. End of April. The new spring has come, but Richard feels unchanged. No optimism lasts more than a moment. Mary is still present in his life, but only in fragments. Conversations turn surface level. Her gaze often lingers elsewhere. One night Richard wakes from a restless sleep, drenched in sweat. He dreamt of her, but it wasn't a fantasy, it was a spiral. An endless game where she kept vanishing just before he could speak. Her laughter echoed like a dare, and he couldn't move fast enough to reach her. He sits upright, grabbed his notebook, and writes what he saw. Not for clarity this time, just to exercise it. Dreamed a nightmare. I dream a dream of things unseen, and everything in between. Getting lost in the backseat. But then there's a shake, a twitch, a stir, churning and turning everything into a nightmare. Stuck in the endless game of truth and dare. Stuck in the days, stuck with a stare. Nothing left to declare, because no one will even care. Then with a jerk I awoke, wondered what I spoke. Harmless, it was all a joke. More thoughts gone up in smoke. Give myself a pinch, give myself a poke. There's nothing left to provoke. Chapter 6. The Dark Companion. End of July. Richard doesn't write for days, and then weeks. The muse that once danced at the edge of his fingers has disappeared into the fog. He tries to distract himself with music, friends, old books, but it's like trying to light a fire with wet wood. Richard had grown quiet. Friends reached out, but their messages went unanswered. The cafe where he once felt inspired now only made him restless. The pages of his notebook stayed blank, except for occasional scribbles and torn out fragments. Mary was gone. Non-body, she still lived nearby, still stalked him, thinking he doesn't see her. But her presence, yet absence, was everywhere. In his morning routines, in the echo where her laughter used to fit, in the poems he no longer read aloud. The grief wasn't dramatic, it was subtle, lingering, like damp air that never fully dried. He hated how ordinary heartbreak could be. But the truth, he was still here, still feeling. And one night, with a blanket wrapped around him, soft music playing from a speaker too small, he found the strength to write. Not to remember Mary, but to understand himself. My emotional ups and downs. I want to feel inspired too. I want to create more as well. I need to know what is all true. Not a passing thought. Hurts like hell. When there's a void inside I yearn, each new experience I learn. I learn what is pain, suffering, loneliness that turns to crying, a piece missing that makes me want, just out of reach, it likes to haunt. Depression, it will pass with time. Right now in recovery, rhyme. I will rhyme it all the way now. This dark companion, somehow now. Take this suffering, I will sing. Out of my brain goes with this pain. No denying, I was crying now, as my dark companion leaves now. I will heal in a while, and return to my wanting smile. No need to know it is all false. I will create more with this pulse. I call my own, although I'm tired. Happy now, I feel inspired. Chapter 7. Another year gone. October 30th. Just Richard sitting alone in his apartment, sipping lukewarm coffee as the sky shifted from midnight into morning. Another year passed. He thought of the person he was when he met Mary, the way he smiled so easily, so often, the way he feared nothing but silence. Now silence was his companion, and he no longer feared it. That morning he wandered his neighborhood, hands deep in his coat pockets, exhaling slow clouds of breath into the frosty air. The bookstore still stood where they had once shared their first rainstorm. The bench still bore the initials of strangers. Even the graffiti hadn't changed much. Everything looked the same, but everything was different. When he returned home, he lit a candle, not for ceremony, but for softness. Then he sat down and wrote, not for performance, not for memory, just truth, shaped into something he would carry. The longing remains, but the bond that once anchored them has frayed. That morning, Richard stood at the window. The city ticked on. The moon seemed further away than usual. He wrote, not out of grief, but as a ritual. It's another turning of the wheel, another invisible birthday, a quiet celebration of the hollowness of the heart. Another year. As I watch the hands of the clock, I run into another block, stumble into the next hour, bloom into a wilted flower. The prime moments have passed quickly. Another revolution fee. Feeling more seasoned with knowledge. Seeds dropped with impact on a ledge. The cliffhanger knows no stranger. Another year passed in a blur. The cruel hands are always moving as I stumble still through the time's thing. Chapter 8. The night nears. New Year's Day. The winter still lingered, not just in the air, but in Richard's heart. It had been 2 full years since that curious glance, since Mary, since the poems that once poured out like water from a broken dam. His life had softened in tone. The ache hadn't disappeared, but no longer burned. Instead, it hummed gently beneath everything, like a cello playing beneath louder instruments. The days were lengthening ever so slowly. Each morning, light returns just a little earlier, slipping through his curtains, through across the hardwood like quiet fingers, tracing memory. Richard would wake before his alarm and just lie there, still thoughtful. Not sad anymore, but not quite joyful either. Something in between. His life had stabilized into a quiet rhythm. Journaling in the mornings, small freelance work in the afternoons, evening walks with a neighbor's dog. She was not too old to walk herself. Nights were different. Nights still carried echoes. Not of Mary exactly, but of who he was when he loved her, who he thought he could be, who he still hoped to become. And that tension between the brightness of his waking and the shadows of his sleep became this next story he needed to tell. One night, beneath a moonlit sky, he sat on a cold bark bench. The street lamps hummed softly above, and there, pen in hand, he began again. Not with longing, but with observation. Day and night. As the sun rises, the sun dyes the skies. As the sun rises, another night's demise. As the night dies, it shrinks to a small size. As the night dies, it fades away and cries. As the sun sets, forget your debts. As the sun sets, call off all bets. The night nears, avoid the mirrors. The night nears, the sun sheds its tears. As the shadow monsters come out to play, they will do it until a brand new day. As they encroach upon the fading light, they embrace this brand new night. He finished just as the first light cracked over the rooftops. He didn't fear the night anymore. He simply understood it. The dark was no longer the enemy. It had become a place of reflection, of stillness, even of healing. There would be more sunrises, more nights, more time. That morning, for the first time in weeks, Richard made himself breakfast. Eggs, toast, a cup of coffee. He sat by the window, watching the city wake. There was still pain, but he was no longer living against it. He was finally ready to live with it. Chapter 9. Have a meal. January 8th. 2 years had passed, not exactly to the day, but close enough that Richard could feel it in his bones, in the way his fingers lingered over old photos, and the tightness in his chest when he passed the bakery where they used to stop for tea. But this anniversary, it didn't come cloaked in sorrow. It arrived in stillness, a quiet respect for the winding, winding road he'd walk, and the pieces of himself he'd gathered along the way. Lately he started forgetting to eat again, not intentionally, just letting hours slip by. Lost in poems, freelance edits, deep walks, our dead silences. His notebooks were fuller than ever, but so was the sink, and his body was running on fumes. It hit him one afternoon, somewhere between dizziness and snapping at a blank page. That self-care wasn't always grand. Sometimes it was but about the smallest mercy. A warm meal. So he took the day off, grocery shopped like it mattered, cooked like it meant something, and like he was someone worth feeding. And then he wrote, not as a poet, not as the ghost of someone who once loved, but as a man, alive, present, hungry. Have a meal. There is something new out of the blue, from the wild, yet tamed and mild. Whenever there is a dip in mood, looking for the right thing to do, remember to sit down and eat good food. Process the tasks that I have compiled. After digesting the needs and wants, avoiding the teasing and taunts, time to engage and get things done. Then afterwards, well-deserved fun. So, even if it takes a while, don't forget to smile. He read it out aloud. Over the sizzle of garlic and butter, he smiled. A poem about food, about slowness, about tending, not just to wounds, but to life. The night he washed every dish, played music in the kitchen, cracked a window, let the scent of rosemary and olive oil float into the world. Life still wasn't perfect. Mary's name still stirred something within him. But he no longer felt bitter. He had begun to see love like meals, some sweet, some filling. Some left you hungrier than before, but each one taught you how to feed yourself better than the next time. And tonight he was fed, and that for now was more than enough. Chapter 10. Okay. May the 4th. Spring crept in gently, like a second chance that didn't want to startle him. Richard noticed it first in small things, buds forming on branches, the soft return of birdsong, the sound of a neighbor's laughter spilling through an open window. None of it asked for his attention, but it received it anyway. He had been writing again, not always poetry, sometimes letters to his future self, sometimes journal entries about fear, failure, or the fragile nature of change, and sometimes just lines, single truths that arrived about without fanfare, but stayed. Then came a week, one of those familiar weeks, professional rejection, a creeping shapeless doubt, but this time he didn't collapse. He walked, he breathed, he made a decent cup of tea. Then he sat down at his desk and wrote, not for inspiration, not for comfort, just as a reminder. Okay. I know what I gotta do is keep on fighting as I miss every hit, but will stay strong with a will that will last long enough for the rough times pass, waiting for the aftermath hourglass. Time's up. Let's take a deep breath now. Feel the stress leave. and just say, wow, you've made it through of the many, many times this will come, but see through the experience past, so the next time disappears fast. We are all going to survive it, the good, bad, each different bit, to show we deserve to be here and keep fighting away that fear. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't polished, but it was real. Richard read it aloud, grinning through the last stanza. It was messy, it pulsed. Not the work of a broken man, but of someone in motion. Someone who no longer needed to be perfect. Someone who had learned that being okay was more than enough. Later he posted the poem online. No caption, no context, just the words. Then he closed the app, set down his phone, got up and made dinner. For once, he wasn't waiting for reactions, because this time he didn't write for them. He wrote because he meant it. Chapter 11. Frog Unstuck. July 31st. She found his poem tucked into a book in the back corner of the library. Mira. She didn't know the name behind the words then, only the lines he left behind. So even if it takes a while, don't forget to smile. The librarian, amused by the coincidence, gave her a knowing look. Richard, she said. He's here every other Tuesday. Writes more than he checks out. Reads more than he talks. So Mira waited, not out of urgency, but curiosity. When Richard arrived the next time, she approached him like one might approach a deer in a clearing. You wrote this? She asked, offering the page with gentle reverence. He blinked, nodded. She smiled, nothing starry-eyed or awkward, just genuine. It helped, thank you. That was all. But it was enough. No drama, no tangled expectations, just shared understanding. Poetry, vulnerability, stillness. They begin to meet, sometimes by accidents, sometimes by design. They changed poems, commented on line breaks, debated the merits of overused metaphors. Mira never pushed, but Richard found himself opening up anyway. More than he had in months. She reminded him of a tree, rooted, calm, offering shade instead of a shelter. He didn't lean in. He simply grew nearby. One quiet afternoon, after a morning of shared edits and unspoken peace, he wrote this. Frog Unstuck. I'm a frog in a well, I cannot tell. Thoughts fill up where I dwell. Passion from the rain that fell. From this eventuality, I start to float up, as you see. I jump out as I become free, and onto a beautiful tree. That tree is you, and something new. You keep my emotions cool, and you helped me as I grew. He didn't tell Mira it was about her. But when she read it, she smiled, eyes soft with something unspoken. I love when words grow, she said, handing the page back with care. Especially from someone who thought they were stuck. That evening, Richard walked home, beneath orange-streaked clouds, feeling taller than he had in years, as if he too had branches. Chapter 12. A Rose. The ending. was a moment in autumn, just before the morning frost, when Richard caught his reflection and didn't look away, not out of vanity, not even out of curiosity. He simply paused and accepted the quiet tiredness in his eyes, the softened curve of his smile, the fact that he was still here, still himself, not the man he once was, not quite the man he imagined he'd be, but something real, honest, blooming. Mira had once told him during a shared silence at the park, healing's like gardening. You don't need to force a flower open. You just give it space, sun, soil. The rest is trust. He was learning to trust again, to trust himself. That morning, with light spilling through his window and coffee cooling on the table, Richard wrote something different. Not lament, not a love letter, just a witness to where he was. A rose. A rose unlike any other, separated from its bouquet, rediscover a uniqueness that blooms and grows, although a little thorny, as sweet kindness shows. Taken, kept, lost, then found, all done in a deafening sound, reaching to no one around, as the last petal falls to the ground. When the rose blooms again, it will take its time to prepare. As the sun shines, it will mend, beautiful again, with tender love and care. He closed the journal, not to hide the poem, but to let it rest. Later that week, Mira invited him to a community poetry night. He declined at first, out of habit, not fear. But she didn't push. She smiled. I think someone needs to hear you, she said. So he went. He didn't read the poem, not yet. But he sat among people who listened, who spoke gently, who understood without asking questions. And for the first time in a long time, Richard felt not just healed, but whole. He no longer believed in tidy endings, only seasons, chapters, rebirths. The rose he had once been cut, bruised, scattered, was blooming again, not for anyone else's bouquet, just for himself.